Most of you that know me, you know that I was inspired to study the martial arts as a result of seeing Bruce Lee on film as a child. He just leaped out at me on the screen, and I gravitated to martial arts, and I began my martial arts journey, if you will, at the age of 10, and I have been on that journey up until this very present, and I continue in that grain. Bruce Lee is responsible for who I am as a martial artist because I went on a journey of self discovery. Note that I said self discovery, not just simply absorbing everything someone told me and saying that that's the gospel and that's the truth. No, I wanted to find out what everyone around me in my environment in martial arts and all of the various styles and systems had to offer. So I began to study the martial arts, pretty much like he did. And there's nothing wrong with that. Checking the uncharted territories sometimes, so to speak. Now, with that said, getting back to Bruce Lee, most of you know that I love Bruce Lee. He was a great inspiration, not only to myself, but to many, many, many millions of people. And to this very day, he is still revered as a great martial arts practitioner. Now, as it relates to fight scenes in the movies, I wish that I could find this Guinness Book of World Records. I remember this very vividly. I don't know what edition it was. I know they change ever so often. But one edition of Guinness Book of World Records I watched some years ago. I believe it was in the 80s or the 90s. To prove what I'm saying to you, that someone else thought the same thing as I did, that Bruce Lee's fight scene in Enter the Dragon in the tunnel by the elevators was the greatest fight scene of any action film ever made during that time and during this time as well. Now, this was a Guinness Book World Record posted about Bruce Lee. The fight scene in the tunnel of Enter the Dragon, where Bruce Lee was downstairs. He used the bow, staff, the eskrima sticks, the nunchakus, and his bare hands. He transitioned from one thing to the next. Extraordinary fight scene. I had never seen anything in my life so realistically put together. And some people say, well, that can never happen. That's not true. It looked very convincing, and not simply because it was choreographed. Oftentimes, choreography has to be put in a certain way to protect the participants. I'm sorry, but anyway, you don't want to hurt the people that are part of the fight scene, so it has to have some level of choreography control in it for the most part. I mean, Bruce Lee just couldn't be brutal and beat everybody up, but the symmetry of his movements. You saw Wing Chun, you saw boxing, saw karate in Bruce Lee's fight scenes, which is indicative of him studying various systems and styles. Anyway, outside of Enter the Dragon, some might disagree with me on Enter the Dragon, the fight scene in the tunnel being the greatest fight scene ever of any motion picture, actually, is what Guinness said, not just martial arts genre. If you believe that there's another fight scene of any other martial artist or any other individual, period, in any other movie, list it below and let us know what was the greatest fight scene that you have ever seen on screen. It may have been Bruce Lee in another film, Chinese Connection or The Big Boss or what have you, but I am sticking to the Ender Dragon fight scene. Plus, he was 32. That was the last year that he lived, and he was in his best shape physically and more well prepared than he was, I should say, in the previous movies that he had done. So if there's a Western fight scene, another type of genre that there was a greater fight scene in your estimation, please let us know what your opinion is on the greatest fight scene of all time. Or if you agree with what I said, Enter the Dragon, hands down. This is Brother Teacher. So long.